2016 marks the 25th anniversary of Sonic the Hedgehog, and last week I counted down my favorite levels from the classic Sonic games. But now I'm back to talk about my least favorite, the absolute worst levels from classic Sonic, games released prior to the release of Sonic Adventure for the Sega Dreamcast. Keep in mind, this is actually a really hard list to put together as I love most classic Sonic levels, and a lot of ones I don't like are minor annoyances and just minor things, honestly, in the end that make me dislike them or dread playing through them over and over again. But without further ado, let's count down the worst levels from the classic Sonic games. There were surprisingly a lot of Sonic games released for Sega's handheld, the Game Gear, one of which being Sonic Chaos. And while the game is okay and a pretty decent platformer for Sonic, the level of Sleeping Egg Zone was one that I never really was a big fan of. There's a lot of bottomless pits, it feels a bit barren, the design of it isn't really anything that does anything special, and the boss at the end was extremely annoying. This bouncing robot that kept shooting out machine gun-like fire that ended up slowing down the game and making the battle with it extremely annoying. Overall, Sleeping Egg Zone is probably my least favorite level from Sonic Chaos. Sonic 2 for Master System and Game Gear is a completely different game from its Sega Genesis counterpart, and has a few levels that I really enjoy, but one that I can't stand is Gimmick Mountain Zone. Not only does momentum get constantly broken up by running into random spikes, it has those annoying bomb enemies from Starlight Zone from Sonic 1, as well as it has a boar of a boss. And I mean quite literally, it's a mechanical boar that just charges in the walls, and it's extremely easy to get its pattern down and destroy it. It's like a discount version of Metal Sonic from Death Egg in Sonic 2. Overall, Gimmick Mountain Zone is one of the more boring experiences in Sonic 2 on Game Gear. Now, I may be cheating a little bit with this one, but the machine from Sonic Spinball, one of the absolute most annoying levels. Not only is Sonic Spinball not that great of a game for a lot of people, though I actually kind of enjoy it, the machine itself just ends up dragging for way too long. It's the third level of the game, it has more Chaos Emeralds than any of the other previous stages that you've already completed, as well as it has the worst track musically that you have to listen to, and since the level's longer, you're going to be listening to that music track for quite a bit. The only interesting tidbit about it is a lot of the assets that were used for the level design were actually taken from the failed Genocide City Zone that was originally going to be in Sonic the Hedgehog 2. I'm actually a big fan of the 8-bit version of the original Sonic. I love the soundtrack that goes along with the game, and like a lot of the level designs overall, but one level I hate is Sky Base Zone. It has those very annoying lightning fields that keep popping in and out that you have to wait for them to dissipate before you can actually keep going forward, as well as the area that's filled with all the cannons. It's cool to see all these cannons firing at you, and it's a bit difficult to traverse, but what makes it a bore is the fact that it slows the game down to a crawl because there's just too much going on screen at one time. In the end, while I do like Sonic for the Master System and Game Gear, Sky Base Zone is one level that I could do without. I've made it quite known that Sonic 2 is my favorite Sonic game in the whole franchise, but Oil Ocean Zone is one of those levels that ends up breaking the pace. After going through a lot of great level after level after level, I found that Oil Ocean ended up slowing things down. It was a bit of a mess as far as its overall design, and the whole kind of oil theme really didn't end up doing anything for me. Though, I do particularly like the track that goes along with it, as all Sonic 2 music is absolutely fantastic. But overall, every time I play through Sonic 2 again, I'm not really a big fan of going through Oil Ocean again. Don't get me wrong, I love Sonic 1, but I feel like a lot of the levels don't hold up, especially compared to later classic Sonic games. Spring Yard Zone in particular, while I like the aesthetic and I do love the music for it, don't get me wrong, but I feel like there's too many times in the level where you're dealing with a lot of springs, a lot of similar looking areas and hallways that you're running through, as well as those really slow moving platforms that you have to jump on and wait for them to ascend or move left and right so you can continue on. Overall, it may not be the worst offender from Sonic 1, but I'm not a big fan of Spring Yard Zone. While I don't have the nostalgia that a lot of people do with Sonic CD, when I finally played it years later, I really do love most of the game. A lot of the levels really stood out, and I absolutely adore the soundtrack. Even some of the English tracks are really good. But Wacky Workbench is a level that I just find an absolute chore to play through. I'm not really a big fan of the factory or metal-themed levels in any platformer, and Wacky Workbench definitely offends me in that way. But at the same time, I just find the overall design to be not really fun or enjoyable to play through. It does have that cool little angel statue Easter egg in it, but honestly that doesn't do really too much to save Wacky Workbench from being my least favorite level in Sonic CD. Sonic Blast for the Game Gear is one of my least favorite as far as classic Sonic goes, mostly just because I don't really like the aesthetic of the whole pseudo 3D Sonic model, but it does have Knuckles. The level designs though I just felt were a bit lacking and bit plain. Blue Marine Zone is a great example of that. It's an underwater level which sometimes is done well in classic Sonic games, but I feel like here it slows down the already relatively slow pace of the game even farther down, as well as it really doesn't do a whole lot for me. There's a lot of just blandness to going through, and it's much more of a chore to just kind of slog your way slowly through the already just okay Sonic Blast. Blue Marine Zone honestly is a level that could have been removed and made Sonic Blast a tad bit better. Metropolis Zone. You probably saw this one coming, but my least favorite level from Sonic 2. It has by far the most annoying enemies in all of Sonic 2. There's annoying mantises, there's crabs that are honestly hard to hit. Getting that sweet spot sometimes ends up being really tricky, and I end up losing a lot of rings. Not even counting those whole times you're rotating that screw all the way up, and then one of those annoying exploding stars ends up barely hitting you. You fly backwards all the way back to the bottom and have to do the thing all over again. Plus, being 3 acts when most of the game's levels are only 2 acts, it just feels like the levels last forever. Thankfully, you have that awesome Sky Chase level afterwards to kind of cleanse the palate, but Metropolis Zone, sorry, one of my least favorite levels of all time. Before we get to number 1, let's look at a couple of honorable mentions, and honestly they're only on here because of a couple of annoyances that have bothered me for years. Carnival Night Zone. While a great overall level, I love the music, I like Carnival themed stages, but you know what I'm probably gonna say. That really extremely annoying aspect of hitting up and down on the D-pad in order to get that one platform to rise and fall enough so that you're able to get over and continue the stage. I am sure, like many, countless gamers got stuck, and the time would even run out because you couldn't figure out how to get that thing to move. You kept jumping and jumping and trying to get it to go up, but it just kept failing. And then when you find out it's just press up and down on the D-pad, you just want to smack yourself for why didn't you think of that sooner. For all time, Carnival Night Zone, and that spot in particular, has always bugged me. While I like most of the levels in Sonic 1 on Master System and Game Gear, Jungle Zone, mostly just Act 2, as the first act is perfectly fine. But Act 2, when you have to go really from down to up instead of from left to right, and there's a lot of times you could easily get knocked off into the waterfall and fall way down and have to go through that whole area over again. Any level where you could potentially get knocked off a platform and have to go all the way back through again is always a no-go for me and something that will always bother me, and that's why I'm putting Jungle Zone Act 2 on this list. By far my least favorite level from classic Sonic is Labyrinth Zone. It is one of the most obnoxious, slow-moving, and annoying stages ever. As a kid, I dreaded making it to the end because that third act when you're chasing Robotnik is extremely stressful. You're constantly worrying about spears, chasing him, and trying to make sure you deliver some hits. And then when you make it to the top, finally he just runs away. The whole stress was really bad for a young kid, hearing that intense sound effects of Sonic slowly choking and running out of air, and you're desperately searching for bubbles. It's a memory that will always stand as great nostalgia for me, but even today when I can beat Labyrinth Zone relatively easy, I always think back to the countless amount of lives and continues I spent trying to make it through Labyrinth Zone. So there you have it, my least favorite levels from classic Sonic games. Be sure to let me know in the comments which ones are your least favorites, or maybe even just spots that you're not a big fan of, like those endless bottomless pits in Mystic Ruins in Sonic 2. Also be sure to let me know what other Sonic-based countdowns or any countdown you would like to see me cover in the future. But anyway guys, that's going to wrap up this video. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course I hope you enjoyed.